Britain's most compelling commentator, Darren Grimes, star of the popular YouTube channel Reasoned UK. He's got a gazillion followers. You're about to find out why. Darren, is the Queen's speech the rocket fuel that Britain needs?
Well, actually, I thought Boris Johnson's performance in the chamber today was actually excellent. And it really actually made me regret the fact that over recent weeks and months, I've found myself on the opposite side to this man who I've liked and followed for such a long time. I think it was probably a decent enough. I don't think there's anything really that I disagree with there, but I tell you what, I would have liked to have heard Her Majesty the Queen read out that we will pledge, Her Majesty's government would pledge to never again lock us down now that we've got the vaccine rollout scheme going. That's what I would have liked to have heard, Mark.
Yes, one thing that it's all too easy to gloss over with our optimism about the future is the fact that so much of this repair that needs to happen is because of a year of lockdowns inflicted on us by a Tory government.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. And it's hard to believe, really, isn't it, that we're talking about things like voter ID, very controversial at the moment. But the left, Mark, says absolutely nothing about the idea of vaccination passports. I mean, to me, that's an even bigger, it doesn't even compare to voter ID. That is such an infringement on our liberties. The idea that you would need to show your medical status to access certain parts of the country, that to me is absurd. If there's any sort of infringement on liberty, it has to be that one. Yet the left is completely, supremely relaxed about that. And they care more about this voter ID thing because they're worried it's going to lose them votes. And that, to me, is cynical in the extreme and just tells you exactly why, in places like County Durham, they are losing votes every single election.
Do you think talk of a decade in power for the Prime Minister is premature, Darren?
I think every Prime Minister probably wants to go on for as long as Margaret Thatcher did, right? Which is, 11 and a half years? I think that's the goal. Everyone would like to say that they've outlasted Maggie. But I mean, I don't know, to be honest with you. Looking at the state of the opposition in this country, I can't see a Labour government anytime soon. But then I would have probably said in 2016, 5 years ago now, that we wouldn't have left the European Union. So, politics is very much an open, it ebbs and flows. Who knows where we'll be in 5 years' time? But I think it's safe to say that the Labour Party are in dire straits.
Well, yes, I can't see an overall majority for a Labour government again. I think that's it now. I think they're done. But what could happen is consolidation, the coalition from hell of Labour, Greens, perhaps Lib Dems, and the SNP.
Yeah, definitely, but perhaps, unless the SNP, of course, managed to break Scotland away from the Union of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But hopefully that won't happen. But I think you're probably right. That probably is the only route to Labour securing power now. And isn't that a sort of damning indictment of their popularity in the rest of the country? That the only way they'll be able to get into power, the only way they'll be able to put in place what I would describe as being the sort of guardians of wokeism, is through other minority parties. It's through getting the SNP, separatists, those who wanted to dismantle our union, the most successful political and economic union I think the world has ever seen, and the Welsh separatists as well, and the Green Party, which, to be honest with you, Mark, if we follow everything that the Green Party are putting forward as a policy platform, we'll be still crawling around in dirt and living in caves. I think that's the sort of Britain that they envisage.
Definitely. I do worry about that in terms of the future. Let's talk about the Queen's speech. Conversion therapy to be banned in England and Wales. Can you tell us what conversion therapy is and why it's being banned?
Yeah, so this is one I've been thinking about over recent weeks, Mark, and it's because I certainly didn't have conversion therapy, which is the idea that someone can be in its, I guess, in the sense that the sort of stereotype of it would be to assume that you can get someone through therapeutic means, and that therapeutic means might mean something as extreme as electrocution, electroshock therapy, those sort of things. That's the caricature of conversion therapy. Now, I don't want to take out the world's tiniest violin, but, I went through a pretty torrid time at school, and I think actually for what was an accident of birth, in my opinion. There's nothing I can do about the fact that I am a gay man. And for a short period in my adolescence, I imagine that I would have jumped at the chance to stop being gay if I could. So, Mark, and the reason I say this is because I want to put across really strongly my view that conversion therapy, in that sense, the idea that you can force someone, coerce someone into changing their sexuality, is abhorrent. And I don't believe you can do that. I don't believe it's actually possible. I don't believe there are any studies that tell us that you can do that, or, of course, that it's even desirable. But if you look at the reason that this is put forward, right, the idea that this is a problem in this country, when we've got the established church who is vehemently opposed to this sort of thing. We've got the nation's therapeutic authorities, and they are all condemning conversion therapy in that sense of, as I say, coercive control. And then, of course, the government are moving forward and saying, well, we need to put a new law in place in order to make sure this stuff is eradicated altogether. But Mark, anyone doing this stuff already is breaking the law now, today. And they should be facing pretty serious repercussions for doing so. If they're not, that's something to do with policing, not legislation. You know, for attempting to ruin someone's life in the pursuit of making them straight is already illegal. To coerce someone, to shock them, they're already things which are really illegal. And I'm at a loss as to why the Conservative Party are focusing on this sort of stuff, waxing lyrical about this stuff, when I can't see any need for further legislation of already illegal practices. And as I say, I repeat that, rightly so, but they are already illegal. Why are we doing this?
Yes, absolutely. And if you are gay, that is the most wonderful blessing. And it's certainly not a lifestyle choice to be gay. You are a gay person, and any talk of conversion is deeply offensive and obviously hugely counterproductive. But interesting that you've suggested we don't need this legislation. Just enforce the rules that are already there. You could argue the same for free speech, couldn't you? Those ridiculous hate laws in Scotland which aren't required. Let's talk about the Church of England. Why has it turned woke? Yeah,
so the Church of England, I think, is basically, instead of concentrating on getting bums on seats, which, by the way, Mark, is something that it absolutely desperately needs to do. You know, there are fewer than millennials now going to church than I think there ever have been as far as records got concerned, you know. And they are focusing instead on, they've said, well, actually, instead of pulling down statues, what we could really do with is putting another statue next to it, which one we approve of. But Mark, this just gets us into the ridiculous situation where what we find is that in years to come, in, I don't know, the next 50 years or so, how do we know? Why do we have the sort of arrogance that suggests that we right now have reached the pinnacle of moral superiority? We today are so virtuous that nothing will ever replace us. There won't be people in 50 years who think, oh dear, Mark Dolan and Darren Grimes' views are abhorrent. We need to tear down their statues, which of course are coming, Mark. We know they will. And build someone else's statue next to them to sort of, I guess, talk up the merits of how virtuous modern society is over Mark Dolan and Darren Grimes. This is palpable nonsense, because all you do is end up replacing today's moral standards and sort of accuse and point the finger at those who didn't have the same moral standards as today. You end up, and it's sort of like a road to nowhere. This is all paved with good intentions. I don't doubt that for a second. But it's a sort of, you're basically achieving nothing here. All you're doing is tearing stuff down, when actually the Church of England should be about building stuff up, especially at this time when we need spiritual guidance, we need spiritual direction, we need hope. And the Church of England, the message of Christ, is supposed to be embedded in that message of hope. That's what we need, not commissions on statues, Mark.
Amen to that. Always speaking wonderful common sense. Darren, we love having you on the show. Look forward to another Grime Time a week from now. Darren Grimes is a broadcaster, a commentator. You can see him on YouTube. He has a popular channel called Reasoned UK.